We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Aleph and Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 20a. The Gemara says, Kasha de Rabbi Akiva ad Rabbi Akiva. We do have a contradiction within Rabbi Akiva. Because Hasam Amar, because over there he said, Mechika Makva, that everything depends on the Mechika. Once we erase the scroll at that point in time, if she says she's not going to drink, we force her to drink. It all goes by the moment of erasing the scroll. But over here he says that it goes by the moment of the Kmitza, that it's only after they burn the Kmitza at that point in time do we say that if she says she's not going to drink, we force her to drink, but before the Kmitza, we do not force her to drink. Rashi explains, Kasha de Rabbi Akiva ad Rabbi Akiva. Hasam kamar mechika ma'akva esa ones. There we say that it's the erasing that forces, that we force her to drink. The cholz man shalo nimchaka, meaning, if you're at a situation where it wasn't yet erased, imamra eini shos, if she says, I'm not going to drink, yechol l'achzer, but we allow her to retract, she doesn't have to drink. So we don't force her to drink. But once that scroll is erased, then we physically force her to drink. And it sounded like earlier, even if you have not yet brought the komets, meaning even if you erased it early, and that's what Rashi mentioned on the previous Amud according to Rabbi Akiva. And that was that first vehishka. That's how we darshan it. Yet over here we say komets ma'akev esaones. We say it's not true. The kamitza has to be brought in order to force her to drink. The chol kama de lo karav komets, because if you haven't brought the komets yet, iamra eini shos. If she says that I'm not going to drink, lo ansin and lo lahashkosa. At that point in time, even if you've erased the scroll, but you erased it early, but at that point in time, we will not force her to drink. And the Gemara answers, Trei Tanoi v'alivad Rabbi Akiva. You have to say that these two brises in fact do argue, and there's a machlokas Tanoim. What exactly does Rabbi Akiva hold? Is it the mechika that's ma'akev, or is it the komets that is ma'akev? And the Gemara continues, Iboilu, they ask the following question. Amra eini shosa machmas briusa. Let's say she said, I'm not going to drink, and she did it in a state of health. It doesn't seem that she was doing it out of a state of fear, which we generally assume means that she is admitting that she's tameya, and therefore she doesn't have to drink. V'chazra v'yamra shosani. But then she goes ahead and she retracts, and she says, I do want to drink. So what's the halacha? Kevan de amra eini shosa, since she said that I'm not going to drink, tameya ani ka'amra, so she's really already admitting that I'm tamei. V'kevan de achzik nafsha b'tumah, once there's a presumption that she's tamei, lo matzi hadraba, so she can't retract. Odilmor maybe came to Amra Shosani, since she said, I'm going to drink, she changed her mind. So Galia daita demachmas biasusu damra. So now it's clear that when she originally said, I'm not going to drink, when she said that, it was just out of fear, but it wasn't really an admission that she is defiled. And the Gemara says to that teku, the Gemara leaves that as a question. Rashi explains, V'chazra v'amra shosani l'Rebbi Akiva ma'u. This is all a question according to Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva is the one in the previous Amud who made a distinction between saying I'm not going to drink in a state of health and doing it in a state of fear. So Maula Ashkosa Meritzona, again, what's the halacha? Can we give her to drink? Let's say she changes her mind and she wants to drink. And the Gemara continues, Amar Avua de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, says, Tzarech sheyiten mar l'soch hamayim. There's a requirement that something bitter has to be put into the water. My time, what's the reason? Damar kramei hamorim. It says the bitter waters, and we understand that to mean shamarim kvar, that they were already bitter. Rashi says, Sheyitein mar davar mar, something that's bitter, shamarim kvar kodem mechika. The point is, it was already bitter before you erased the name of Hashem and the scroll into the waters. Alma machmas davar achar heimarim. The point of the drush is, we see that it's something else that's causing it to be bitter. It's not called bitter because of the curse and because of the testing of the individual, Nikra. Because before you erase anything, it's not yet waters that can test, but it's already called the bitter waters, Shemarim Kvar, and therefore it must be that there's an ingredient that is added that makes the water bitter. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ad shelo nimcha kahamegillah, before the scroll is erased, Amra eini shosa, let's say she says, I'm not going to drink. So Megillasa nignezes, the halacha is that we store away her Megillah, we store away that scroll, Uminchasa mispazeres ala deshen, and her karva mincha, it is scattered over the ashes. Ve'ein Megillasa ksher lahashkos basod acheres, and her Megillah is not going to be kosher to be used to give to drink to another sota. Megillah, let's say the Megillah is erased, V'yomra tamei ani, and then she says, she admits, I am tamei, I'm defiled, so hamayim nishpachin, so then the water is just poured out, u'minchasa mispazeres al beis hadeshen, and her mincha is scattered across the ashes. And the Mishnah continues, Nimchaka HaMegillah, let's say the Megillah is erased, V'amra eini shosa, and she says, I'm not going to drink. She doesn't admit, she doesn't say, I am tamei, she just says, I am not going to drink. In that case, Ma'arinosa, Umashkanosa, Balkarcha, so then we physically force her to drink the waters. And the Mishnah continues, Eina maspekes lishtos, she doesn't finish drinking achapana morikos until her face already begins to turn green, veinet boltos, and her eyes bulge, vimismalis, getting in her veins, they become fuller. Vehem omrim, and they say, Hotziua, get her out of here, shalot tatame ho azara, that she shouldn't cause the azara to become tameh. If she has a merit, so then it could suspend it for her, meaning it can delay her punishment. There are some merits that can delay for 1 year. Some merits can delay for 2 years. And there are some merits that can delay for 3 years. From here Ben Azai says, a person is obligated to teach his daughter Torah. That way if she drinks Teda, she'll know that it's her merits that are delaying her punishment. She's not going to think that the waters aren't working. Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who teaches his daughter Torah, lomda tiflus, it's like teaching her intimacy, physical intimacy. Rabbi Yoshua says, Rotza isha bekav v'tiflus, a woman wants a kav and physical intimacy more mites kabin uprecious, more than 9 kabin, and precious meaning to say that she will have that separation, she will not have that intimacy. Hu haya omer, he used to say, Rabbi Yoshua used to say, Chassid Shota, a pious person who is a Shota, who is foolish, V'rasha Aram, or a crafty, wicked person, V'isha Prusha, or a woman who's a Prusha, meaning she separates herself from physical pleasure, Umakos Prushin, and those who injure themselves out of falsely separating from physical pleasures, Hare'elum Evali Olam, these are people who destroy the world. And Rashi explains Megillasa Nignezes in a situation where before the Megillah was erased, she says, I'm not going to drink, so then we store away the scroll, B'tzidei HaHechel, in the sides of the Hechel, the Chol Kisvei HaKodesh She'enan Ru'uyin Likros Ben, the halachas in general, anytime you have Kisvei HaKodesh, which you can't use, you can't read from, Nignozin Shelo Yizbazu, so then you store them away, that they shouldn't be in a disgraced state, Al Beis HaDeshen, and then it said in terms of the Karva Mincha, gets scattered on the ashes, Shi Bazar, this is talking about the Beis HaDeshen in the courtyard, Shesorfen Sham Psulei Kodshe Kodshim, that's where they burn anything that's disqualified from Kodshe Kodshim, Upsulei Emurim Shemechitzasim Lifnim Min HaKloim, let's say you have Emurim, the innards that are usually offered, so those have to be within the actual area of the Azar of the Beis HaMikdash, Kiraminam B'Shchitas Kodshim, that's what it says in Shchitas Kodshim, Shlosha Beis HaDeshen Heim, there are 3 that are by the Beis HaDeshen, the whole V'Kitsha B'Chli, Nisrafas B'Azar. The point over here is once it's sanctified in the Kli Shares, so it has to be burned within the Azara. Behind Mispazeres, Hainu Nisrefes, and Rashi just points out when it says it's scattered, it really means it's burned. Kedamar Lakamon, we're going to say that later on. Ve'elu shemin choseim nisrafes. The following cases, the mincha is burned. V'kachashav laha omeres eini shos. And one of the cases is this very case where the woman says, I'm not going to drink. So in such a situation, this is a case where it's burned, and that all takes place within the Azara. Ve'en megillah ksher lahashkos basota acheres. You can't use her Megillah for another sota. The ba'inon ksiva lishma needs to be written for the sake of this particular sota for her. Techsiv v'asa lahakohen lo lishma. It says v'asa lahakohen. We understand that to mean lishma. And hamayim nishbachin, it says you pour out the water. Let's say it's a case where the Megillah was already erased. Kevan damra tameya ani, once she says I am tameh, bedukov omedisi. So at that point in time she's already been tested. Umayim hamorim lo nitnu el lavaris hasafik. The only point of the bitter waters is to clarify a situation of doubt. This is not a situation of doubt. However, in a situation where she just says, I don't want to drink, but she doesn't actually admit, so then we force her to deal with tahori, because there, maybe she actually is pure. And she's just saying it because she's scared. Mismales gidin, so her veins fill up. Hagidin shablecha nofchin veneers kimlea gidin. The point is that it swells up. V'gam besara nasha shita al naficha v'hachitanya besefri kamo sharvitin mizorakin ba. The same thing happens with her flesh. Shalot hitmo hazara, and then we quickly get her out of there, so she shouldn't make the hazara impure. Sharei Nikanor. We're talking specifically about the area by the gates of Nikanor. O Ezras Nashim, or also we could be talking about the courtyard for the women. Shetetze derech sham. That's the direction she goes. The point over here is she never actually was in the hazara itself. The closest she got to the Azar was by the gate, by the Nikanor gate, but we want to get her out of there. The Gemara is going to ask later on, but what's the issue over here? Shari Nikanor didn't have any Kedusha anyway. Ezras Nashim, and certainly the Ezras Nashim had no Kedusha. A dead body is allowed to be in the Machan Eleviyah. So what's the issue over here? Why do we have to hurry her out? She should know that it's merit that can delay the punishment. We want her to be learned. So she knows the Parsha Sotah. Shazachus told her that we shall know that the merit can delay the punishment. Yalfinan mi v'niksav in Israel Zara, v'niksal yidei zechius, kedei zriya zera, tes chadoshim, v'yad alaf yosek, and mefarsh b'gemar. The Gemara will explain the times of delay of the punishment. Malam de tiflus, again, if you teach her Torah. So the other opinion was that's like teaching her physical intimacy, mefarsh b'gemara. That will be explained in the Gemara. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Rodzi Shabakav Tiflus Karsinan. Rabbi Yoshua says that a woman wants a kav of food and physical intimacy more than 9 kav and abstinence. Over Gemara Mefarish my Kamar, the Gemara will explain what we're saying over here. And finally, the Mishnah said Makos Prushin. Let's say you have people who pay Rushin, meaning they're abstinent, they abstain from physical pleasure, and they get wounded. Mefarish b'Gemara, the Gemara will explain this case. Shemakes atzmo b'ksolim. He hits himself against walls. Laharoshu onav v'tzanua, to show that he's like a humble person and a modest person. Again, these are all people. The Chassid Shota, the Rasha Aram, the Isha Prushim, the Makos Prushim. Those are all Mevale Olam. Those are all people that cause destruction to the world. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel Mishum Rabbi Meir. Rav Yehuda said that Shmuel said in the name of Rabbi Meir, Kishal Yisi Lamed Torah Eitzel Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Meir said, when I learned Torah by Rabbi Akiva, Hayisi Matel Kankantum L'soch Hadiyah. I would put Kankantum into the ink. V'lo Amar Li Davar, and Rabbi Akiva didn't say anything to me. He didn't protest. Kishabasi Eitzel Rabbi Shmuel. But when I came to Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Lei said, B'ni, my son, Ma Malachtecha, what is your profession? What is your work? Amarti Lo Lav Lorani. So I said to him, I'm a scribe. Amar Li said to me, B'ni, my son, have a zar shemalachtecha melecha shamayim hi. Be careful because your work is the work of heaven. Shematachzir osachas otatir osachas. Maybe you'll leave out a letter, maybe you'll add a letter. Nimsasata machriv eskol olam kula. Will come out that you'll destroy the whole world. Amarti lo. So I responded to him. Again, this is Rabbi Meir now responding to Rabbi Yishmael. Davar echad yesh li shani matel l'soch hadiyo. I have something, an ingredient that I put into the ink of a kankantum shmo. It's called kankantum. Amar le. So he said to me, v'chimatilam kankantum. But are you allowed to put kankantum into the ink? HaTorah amru macha, but the Torah says it has to be erased by the Megillah Sotah. Ksav sheyuchal limchos, it has to be a kind of writing that is erasable, something that can be erased. And so the Gemara says, "My kamar le, my kam hadir le." Gemara says, first of all, what is the back and forth over here between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yishmael? And the Gemara explains, "Hachi kamar le." This is what he said to him: "Lo mi boim b'chaseros v'yaseros debaki ana." I don't even need to tell you anything about missing a letter or adding a letter, missing a word, adding a word. I'm an expert, and so that's not a concern. But even if there's a concern that maybe a fly will come, maybe it'll come and it will sit on the tip of the dalid and erase it and turn it into a reish. But I have a certain thing, an ingredient, that I put into the ink, the kankantum shemo, and it's called kankantum, and it prevents erasure in this fashion, and so that solves that potential problem. But the Gemara continues, Ini, is this brisa really accurate? V'atanya, but we learned in another brisa as follows, Amar Rabbi Meir says, Kishayisi lama Torah eitzel Rabbi Yishmael, when I learned Torah by Rabbi Yishmael, Hayisimatel kankantum l'soch hadiyo v'lo amar li davar, I would put kankantum into the ink and he didn't say anything to me. And so here he's learning not by Rabbi Akiva, who doesn't say anything, but he's learning at first by Rabbi Yishmael, who doesn't say anything. And then it goes on, Kishabasi Etzel Rabbi Akiva, when I came to Rabbi Akiva, Asra Allah, he's the one that prohibited for me. So Kasha Shimash Hashimash. So first of all, we have a question in terms of who he served first and who he served second. In the second brayse, it reverses the order. It says he went to Rabbi Yishmael first and then Rabbi Akiva. And Kasha Asra, and we also have a question, who's the one that prohibited it? In the second brayse, it says Rabbi Akiva prohibited the kankantum. In the first brayse, it says Rabbi Yishmael prohibited. And so the Gemara says, Bishlam Shimash Hashimash Lo Kasha. I understand in terms of who he was learning by, that's not difficult. Because Meikara also Lakami Rabbi Akiva. Originally, he learned by Rabbi Akiva. Came into Lomotzi Kamali, but then when he was by Rabbi Akiva, he understood he wasn't able to understand Rabbi Akiva fully. He couldn't understand what the halacha was. So Asa Lakamid Rabbi Yishmael, so he came to Rabbi Yishmael, the Gomer Gemara, and he learned the traditions. And then Hadar Asa Lakamid Rabbi Akiva, then again he returned to Rabbi Akiva, and Savar Svar, that's when he was able to understand the logic, to learn the logic from Rabbi Akiva. So we can understand essentially, he went to Rabbi Akiva, then to Rabbi Yishmael, and back to Rabbi Akiva. But we still do have a difficulty in terms of who was the one who was prohibiting the kankantum. Was it Rabbi Yishmael or was it Rabbi Akiva? And to that the Gemara says, Kash, indeed that is difficult. And Rashi explains, Lo matzi lamekem alibe, when he first went to Rabbi Akiva, he couldn't know what the final halacha was. Alikari taime sheyomer al tamei tar u'mar lo panim ve'al tar tamei mar lo panim. The point was Rabbi Akiva knew how to give reasons for everything, so he would show something that was tamei and show a reason why it could be tar. Something that was tar, he could show a reason it would be tamei. So he didn't know the final halacha. Without knowing what the final halacha was, it was difficult to keep up with the svaras of Rabbi Akiva. So therefore, asal kamed Rabbi Shmuel v'gomer Gemara. So therefore, he came to Rabbi Shmuel and he learned the traditions. HaMishnah Yistumos. He just learned what's the halacha, what's the Mishnah. Kemoshe, and just what is the halacha? Kedegamer lumei rabo v'rabo mei rabo. Like he learned from his Rebbe and his Rebbe from his Rebbe. V'hadar asal kamed Rabbi Akiva lemisbar svar. Then he was able to go back to Rabbi Akiva and learn the logical arguments. Lamod al ikar tamei HaMishnah, to understand the reasons of the Mishnah. Mipnei mazet tamei v'zet tar, zeh osur v'zeh mutter. Why is this tamei? Why is this tar? Why is this osur? Why is this mutter? V'al kol v'al ma kol davar nismach. What's everything relying on, supported by? V'al eza mikra, what pasuk? V'zeh Talmud shall be mei Tanoim. That's called Talmud in the days of the Tanoim. Ulahavin davar mitoch davar. He also started to understand how to understand one thing from another. K'shiyah davar chodesh nishal b'veis hamedrash. Let's say there's a new question that comes up in the base medrash. Me'echon yilmedu le'eza mishnah yidmu. From where should we learn it out? And from what mishnah is it compared to? He was only able to understand all of that after he had went to Rabbi Shmuel first and understood the basic halacha. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Omer Hayer, Rabbi Meir says, L'chom al tilan kankantum l'soch adiyo. In all situations, you're able to put kankantum into the diyo, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Amud Beis.